Now for Global Business Updates, Rotus Oddiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. Good morning, Vimbai. Good morning, Adefemi. All our viewers out there, good morning to you. We're focused only on Nigeria today because of the economic growth figures that we got yesterday. And I thought it was very interesting as Adefemi was going through the paper review that of the major dailies, it was only, I think, the Daily Independent that had Q3 GDP as its front page story. Understandably, everybody else, almost everybody else, was looking at insecurity, which, by the way, I think an ironic twist is that the insecurity that we're seeing based on the numbers from economic growth are not having as much as an impact as one would imagine based on the amount of headlines that we're seeing. But let's get into it. So 3.9% GDP growth in the third quarter of 2025 on a year-on-year basis. Look at the trajectory. You can see here 4.23 was what we had in the second quarter of 2025. Fastest growth that we had in about 4 years. So admittedly, there would have been a bit of a slowdown in the third quarter, but we expect that to pick up with the festivities going on in the fourth quarter of the year. That's later on. So 3.93, that's where we're going to start. We now move on to the contributing factors to economic growth in Nigeria. 53.02% is services. It's a services-based economy. Agriculture at 31.21 and industries at 15%. But here's the thing. Much of our services is in the informal sector. A lot of this has to be formalized in order to get even more productive growth, like exporting services for foreign exchange from Nigeria. So that is to be established as far as the size of the services sector of the economy. Now, the contributing activities to GDP, number one was crop production, right, which makes up the largest amount of the agriculture sector. Crop production, 23%, trade, 16.4%, and then you got real estate, telecommunications and information, livestock construction, crude production and natural gas, food, beverage and tobacco, public administration, and then technical services. But even with crop production being the largest contributor as far as activities to GDP, much of that is subsistence farming. So you've got a lot of farmers in Nigeria's agricultural sector that are producing for themselves. So even though you're seeing this outsized contribution to GDP growth, in terms of getting more quality jobs after the agricultural sector, a lot of work still needs to be done. But I'm going to still stick on agriculture in a moment. So we get to non-oil and non-oil contributions. You can see that basically that in the third quarter of 2025, non-oil contributions was 96.56%. Look at oil all the way down here at 3.4. A lot of that has to do with the rebasing for ICT and real estate and other sectors, which of course they got, as far as the weighting was concerned, a bit bigger. But here's the key thing when you see all this. Remember that even though the oil sector contributes so little in terms of to the economy, in terms of, I could flip this, and for foreign exchange, it is still the oil sector that brings in the bulk of foreign exchange into Nigeria. But non-oil is pretty much where we saw a lot of this growth. So this is the bread and butter right here. Oil production, looking at from Q1 of 2024 to Q3 of 2025, 1.64 million barrels per day. You saw a spike in Q2. Oil production was at 1.68, and this 1.68 compared to the prior year of Q2 2022 was 1.41. So there was a big jump in oil production. Front page of today's This Day newspaper, Nigeria's newspaper of record, is on the NUPRC, looking to get what, $10 billion in investments. The administration has focused, razor sharp on oil. And by the way, speaking of insecurity, does everyone remember before the governor of Rivers State was suspended from office, how the crisis that was in Rivers State threatened to impact oil pipelines in that region? Government wasn't about to take that, and that's the reason why you saw a lot of action. And by the way, those are areas that are targeted. We know where they are, so you can protect them. And it just shows you when the oil sector sneezes, Nigeria essentially catches a cold. So 1.64. Oil sector GDP, I mentioned that 1.68 million barrels in the second quarter. Look at that, we were at 20.46%. We did see a slowdown to 5.66 for the oil sector in terms of real GDP growth. So still oil a big part of the story. The non-oil sector, as I mentioned, it grew by 3.91% in this quarter, higher than 3.64 in the last quarter, and compared to a year ago at this period, Q3 2024, 3.79, and it was anchored by agriculture, ICT, and so on and so forth. Let's move from there to, here's the agriculture, and this is a lot of the story here, because there's been a lot of talk around people leaving, running away from their farms, not being able to produce as much. Again, I reiterate the point. A lot of farmers in Nigeria, of subsistence farmers, they're creating for themselves. As far as the big industrial producers that are contributing to the value chain, you are seeing not only the impact of reducing import duties in order to allow for more food to be brought in, a stable currency. I remember when President Buhari shut down the borders and inflation spiked up. So you got a stable currency thanks to the Central Bank of Nigeria and the work that Governor Olayemi Cardoso and his team have done, and also the fiscal side trying to reduce duties to bring in more food. The jump in prices, in food prices, from 2024 to 2025 is nowhere near what we saw in 2023 to 2024 after the reforms took place and you saw those spikes. So 3.79% for agriculture. Also, we can thank the harvest season as well. That also contributed 3.79, 2.8 to 2.56 compared to the prior years. So that's agriculture, very important. And then information and communications the sector, which includes telecommunications, publishing, motion pictures, and so on, 5.78% compared to Q2. We did see a slowdown of 6.6. Q3 last year was 6.8. So that, again, part of the non-oil story in addition to agriculture. And then finance and insurance. Healthy double-digit growth of 0.63%. Q2 was 16.13. Look at that, 4.3 in Q3. So in terms of currency, you've seen what happened with monetary policy, and it's basically stability of the currency has really impacted and helped the finance and insurance industry. Unfortunately, manufacturing in Nigeria is still struggling, and there still needs to be this term electricity output production 1.25%. This is not impressive in this quarter. Slowed from 1.5 last quarter. Look at where it was last year. 0.76%. So the manufacturing sector really needs a boost. Okay, stable currency. I've already mentioned that we cannot underestimate or overestimate rather the importance of what a stable currency means for being able to plan ahead and keeping prices stable. Cardoso and his team have said, look, we've stabilized the currency. It's over to you, to the fiscal side, in order to put in policies that can get Nigeria growing. So stability is the story with the Q3. Yes, I know that some folks on YouTube, and I know Dr. Bassey say you can't eat GDP, which is very true. But in order for you to eat, you need to earn money. In order for you to earn money, you need to have a job. Nigeria needs to grow jobs. And where? Particularly in STEM. I have said I like the NEL Fund. I like that the NEL Fund is supporting a lot of students out there in terms of getting loans, but they really need to focus on science, technology, engineering, and maths. That is where folks are going to be able to have the skills needed in order to be able to earn more and bring in more in terms of productivity for the economy. And I will shout out the Ministry of Information, Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy under Dr. Bosun Tijani with the 3MTT program, which is trying to get 3 million software programmers trained in Nigeria. STEM is where STEM is where it's going to be. That is our updates for today.
Very good.
GDP growth.
Thank you very much, Rotus. You more or less anticipated me, because I was going to say, yes, data without emotions, fine. But data without measurable outcomes is just voodoo. Because when you say GDP growth, you measure it in terms of consumer spending, the level of investment, and also level of unemployment. Are we spending more? Have we been able to resolve the crisis of the pandemic of empty pockets?
I need to put down a t-shirt.
Or do we have more jobs?
Right.
Anyway, but it's nice to talk about stability. There's growth and all that. Even in China, they are dealing with it, and they are still dealing with this deflation.
Yes, sir.
In India, it's only the place where they are jubilating, because there's concrete activity translating into prosperity for the people. When we begin to prosper, we'll join you to talk more positively about GDP growth.